Welcome to Warblog. Today we're looking at East Caprivi, Namibia, 1978. It's a game that I've sort of compounded into a single game, in the sense that the timeline is sort of compressed. Some of these things will happen over a few days, but if you read the description through, essentially to play this, it's suggested that the South African Defence Force player allows the SWAPO player 3 rounds of attack on whatever target they choose. So they're basically trying to choose one of these 3 targets, and that's what the intelligence has rumoured. In response to the intelligence, they've SADF have formed Alpha and Bravo. I've called them forces because they don't actually explicitly state that they're companies. They might be just sort of quite a lot smaller than companies, so that's sort of compromise, but they are quite big units. And they come on and you can sort of defend wherever you want, and once they have got themselves into position somewhere and fired their rockets trying to do as much damage as possible, the set of forces can cross the border to attack them, but they move away. So as soon as they get across to the border, we could say as soon as they get back to here, it's up to you really. They're considered off board, but I would say here, anywhere along here really, or something like that. It's up to you. I mean, you read the historic narrative behind it and make your own decisions. And then they come back across the border and they have to wait 2 turns of doing nothing to sort of recover, and then they can basically go all the way along here and then cross the border and take out Imusho and whatever's under there, Cinzenbela, I think it is. Now essentially there's not a lot of sort of combat, in the sense that once the South African forces move across the border, the rocket units all run away, so they really don't catch anything. They meet a few trail end forces. One of the companies meets a few trail end forces of the SWAPO forces. They're quite up in an ambush, but not really a lot. And when they take these 2 places, they find them empty. Basically, so it's not as though there's sort of a large engagement, but I mean it's the historic, narrative. I mean it represents what happened in this East Caprivi scenario. I haven't put the date in there. Well, maybe I should do that as well. That might help in these sort of scenarios when they're quite obscure. But there, so we're going to just play that. One of the reasons I'm playing it is because I just want to get an idea of how long it takes to get there. And what the best way through is. Just wondering whether it's going to be better to go along the road. So 1.25. Well, to go through the bush, 1.7. My brain's not in gear really, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to try this the hard way. Yeah, quite clearly I think it's going to be a lot easier to go around the roads. So we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It might be different in the scrub between the bush, but let's say 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This guy 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So 1 turn. Let's get the pen tool out. 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, oh, they don't need to get that far. 1, 2, 3. But it's going to take them 6 turns because they're not going to be in range at turn 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Although they could if they wanted to attack that. But if we went along the roads, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, so obviously faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4, and there would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So by turn 5 they would be in position. You know, I envisaged them actually attacking 1, 2, 3, 4 from Muleleka here. So that's sort of interesting to know, really. It's so interesting that I'm going to start again. Now I deliberately put these forces I deliberately put these forces on this side of the board because I'm quite into sort of forcing the player to sort of do boring things in a small regard. I mean, it's not as though there's like 5,000 units, because that would be boring, but you've got to move them all the way across here, and in the process you're thinking about what you're doing, possibly thinking about, you know, would it be better to go through the country? Now I just figured that out, but I mean, you know, I would imagine that that would be the first thing that someone would think about and consider. I mean, for example, which target we're going to choose. Well, I think we're going to choose this one, which is the one we chose historically, but these 3 are under threat. You know, they'd be hard pressed to actually get to this target because they'd have to cross the river. But it might be a good one, simply because, let me have a look at the map. I wonder if there's a bridge there. Crossing anywhere else. There's no other crossings. I mean, this is quite, you know, there's no other crossings there, so they're really going to be hard pressed to get that. And to be quite honest, I don't actually know where Wenela is. I looked Mapacha up and I found it was there, so I thought, well, if the targets were Katima, Mulilo, Machapa and Wenela, then I could put, and that one doesn't have a base thing, I should have a base on that. Wenela I sort of put there, but maybe it was over here. I don't know. I mean, that would make it easier as a target. You know, so I mean, even the position of Wenela would have a significance in the whole thing. 1 minute, I'll just put a little thing over there, although it won't affect this game. 1 minute. Okay, I've done that. It won't affect this game. So anyway, it's now the SWAPO turn. They've not actually got anything to do because their forces don't come on till turn 4. They've been alerted of this sort of impending attack, so they're forming up these sort of 2 companies. So now it's... Oh. We just did their turn. Okay, swap out. I was going to give them 4 rocket units, but I sort of opted for 3. One of the things I consider to be the objectives is to cause as much damage to a unit as possible. So I might move this actually, because it's not really something that they're actually going to be able to attack unless they sit there, and they could get in there, which would make them quite vulnerable to that. Even if I move it there, 2, 3, 4, they could attack from there. I think I will do that. Point being is that the SADF player has to consider whether or not they defend this, this or this. Now personally I think that they're all going to sit in there, because when it comes their turn to actually attack, they're in the best position to do it. Where if they're here, they're going to be going through bush, and there's a hex in the way here. That, you know, it's going to be almost a whole turn before they can get there. Well, here they can just go straight across the border and attack them wherever they are. So this is where I think the SADF player is going to put its two sort of special force companies. But you know, having to make that choice, for example, you could put one there and leave that relatively undefended. But the objective really is, once these rockets come in, they hopefully, I don't know, this is why I'm sort of playing it, they might be able to do some damage on these. I mean, one of the rockets landed on a military barrack base, killing 10 people. So it's one of these things where, you know, you're not going to be able to take the objectives, although they're objective colours. The objective is to cause some damage on these units. And so where the SADF player puts his units might have might influence where the SWAPO player attacks. Okay, so next turn they'll be in a position to start firing. I wonder why I did that. Okay. Really, you can't move into there. The combination of movement has slowed him down. He could move from bush, but when he ended up there, I mean, I did notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He was at 0 movement. So presumably, spending that amount of time through through these ones first has put him at just enough to not be able to. It's probably 0.8 that he needs to get into there. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He's now out of sync with the rest of the forces. And here are the 2 units. And as I said, I'm going to probably put them. Do I want to put them in there? Because they might get attacked by artillery. I think I will. I could put them in the town, in Katima Mulilo, where they'd be a bit safer. That would be a bit mean, really. Okay, so we're going to attack that place. So get some odds on that. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we really don't need to be anywhere other than there. Let's just see where we've got the range. Yep. So, what I'm going to do with these units is put them just there as defence. So our 3 rounds of combat now. So we've started our rocket attacks. Okay, Okay. 2.8, 0.1, 0.2. Okay, well, the SADF player could move back to protect this base, but they're not going to. So we can't go across yet because it's the middle of the night and the attack's only just started, so probably firefighting and things like that. Okay, so round 2, and they did recover, but 2.7, that's not much of a recovery. I mean, that's oh, look at that, 2.5 on that special force unit. 2.7, and he's going to start, well, he should be routing soon. 2.6. Okay, I'm quite pleased with the way it's actually panning out in regards to effectiveness. South African player not going to do anything. Okay, one more round of rockets. I think we're going to get a rout, probably on this attack. Yes. Okay, next attack. 2.9, and that's quite interesting. Okay, we'll leave that as it is because he is a blocking force. He's now entrenched, so we've got a choice here, an interesting choice really, of trying to stay there to recover or moving out in a disordered fashion. I think we're going to move out disordered. There are special forces, so they can ignore zones of control. It should be a 7-1 or near enough. 3-1, no. They've got a DR. Okay, so I thought it'd be a 7-1 because there were, what were the odds on that? There were 14, so basically they're 4, 8 times 3, 16, 24, but this one was sort of halved, so we can put that back down to about 12, which is about right, plus the surround. So that was actually quite interesting, really. Okay, we've got some more movement. It's too much to attack, obviously. So quite interesting really. Pushing forward like that was dangerous. So dangerous, in fact, that we can probably destroy them. Well, before I do that, all back ends are down. Is that true? Yeah, it comes back. Okay, before I do that, I'm going to move my rockets there. Now they've been blocked by zone of control now, but that gives me the option to run away. But let's see if we can get a rout. They're actually already on 6. There's a 10% chance as it is, so that was a 22% chance. Routed them. And here we have no effect, but they're heavily damaged, so we're going to send out motorised units in 2-1 and exchange. Okay, Well, that was very interesting, because that leaves the Special Forces no other choice but to run away. Unfortunately, it looks like they've got the movement. Yep. Now that was interesting, because there are options to do better, and I think basically I did consider leaving the Special Forces in Kitimo and Malilo, which means they wouldn't have been subject to the rocket fire. And rocket fire was successful in achieving what it wanted to do. In fact, there's probably too many rockets there. I mean, I did want to sort of give them a lot to emphasise the fact that it was mainly a rocket attack, and to give them the option. You know, if you give them one, if it fails, and you don't get much effect. But 3 is probably overkill. I don't know, but I'll leave it at that. But I think 2 things happened there. We were moved into there, which was the mistake, instead of, say, holding them back in Kitimo Malilo or somewhere else where we could sort of pretend that we're sort of supporting all 3 places. But the second thing was, once being damaged, moving across the border. I did consider, I think, well, you know, I could sit there for 2 turns to recover, by which times these units would have all moved off the board. So that's that. It doesn't really get away from the fact that they're pretty strong. Interesting, really. Probably worth playing another time, which I'm not going to do. But the thing to do is, I think at this stage, is really to consider, you know, what do the SWAPO player do? What does the SWAPO player do? And so we're going to get a look at that now. And they might as well just come back here and see what they can do. I mean, they don't even need this as a defence. I think we're going to get a rout. Rout, which means that there's absolutely nothing here to defend. That's interesting. Very interesting. So this part of the game doesn't come into effect. I'm sort of wondering what to do, whether or not it's just to leave it as it is, or to make these bases a lot stronger by putting 2 units in. I think that's what I'm going to do, because they don't become suddenly more offensive. I could knock the rockets down, but I want to give them, you know, a lot of rockets to sort of work with. If I give them, basically they've got 9 attacks, 9 free attacks. If I give them 2, they'll only have 6, which is probably fair. The rocket attacks are going to attack 2, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to readjust the game. Hold on while I do that. Okay, so I've readjusted the game. So let's go back to the start. So what you find now, there's only 2 rocket companies. Just the 2 rocket companies. That gives them 6 free attacks. I've given them 2 extra SWAPO units, 1 there and 1 there. I don't envision them being involved in the attacks, but I've also doubled up on these, and I think that should have an effect, because they're not offensive units. They're not fast enough really to play a part, but they can reinforce each other. And what I'm actually going to do, 1 minute, let me do this. Okay, so I've moved the base over here, so that gives them the option to attack this one, or this one, etc, etc. So let's move into the play mode. I was watching one of my videos, as I quite often do, the other day, and I was thinking it'd be quite interesting to just do a stop motion on the actual movement, because I was looking at one, and it looked quite interesting. I was watching it sort of twice the speed, and just seeing the units move around, and not even bothering with the. I mean, you could do the combats, but not showing that in the video. Just sort of not even showing explosions and things, just sort of showing things moving around. But that would take a lot more time and effort, so I'm not really inclined to do that. But it struck me as a good idea. Okay, so. I mean, obviously, I'm thinking off the fly here, but to attack this one, it sounds like an easy objective, but that would actually mean that I have to sort of get off the road, so to speak. Mulalaluaka is actually a village, so that would give them a 10% bonus as well. So we could actually move towards there. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't have to get to there. He's got no movement left. How did that happen, I wonder? Probably double moved it somehow. Okay. That's interesting. He moves faster in the bush, so we're now all staggered, which isn't necessarily unrealistic. Yeah, I seem to have lots of problems with my mouse. I just refreshed the page doing that, I think. Or did I? I wonder if it would be quicker. No. Worth a try. Okay. So. Oh, we didn't move them. Let's move them. Okay. I think this time we're going to put one unit there. In fact, it's starting to get slow. I'm going to leave them there. I'm pointing at that point, but you can't see that. Because even if the SWAPO units do attack them, they don't get any sort of, I don't want to use the word victory points, but the objective is to do damage to these units, not necessarily these units. The fact that they've got objective markers on them is slightly irrelevant, but I put them on there in anticipation that rocket fire and artillery fire will at some point affect objective values as well. That's a long way down the line, really. But anyway. Maybe didn't want to move that far. So our rocket units are now in place. Same situation as before. 3 turns of fire. Okay, 1.8, 2.3. Okay. Next round of fire. No effect, no effect. See, this is what I was suspecting. But I think this being certain that you get a route on them isn't necessarily what I was aiming to achieve. So you have to be lucky to get a route. You can be unlucky, so maybe it is a better game balance. .3 and the last rocket attack. So in this instance we've put them up to 4.5 and 5.8, so here an 8% chance of routing, which I think is probably what we might call sort of a more nominal victory. So they've achieved their objectives. I think it will, with the 9 attacks, it will be more of a certainty to get her out. And I don't think really that was what happened. I mean, I don't think they were ever in a position to attack the base. But it would have been, you know, even if they'd routed one unit, there would have been another one. So that's that. And bearing in mind, they also had the option on their third turn. They do have the option on their third turn to run away, but they've not done that, which means that they're now subjected to these forces which haven't been hit. Who are now going to do what they did last time and attack these dug-in motorised units, and they destroyed it. The situation is very different. And ooh. Well, there you go. I mean, that's that. I'm not sure what to do, really. Now, I mean, the only thing to say is that the die results are a 1 to 12 as opposed to 2d6. I've said this a number of times, but in case you've never heard it, that means that there's a far greater degree of having a 1. Having a 1 is just as... There's just as much chance of having a 1 as there is a 6 as there is a 12, whereas 2d6 is more of a bell curve. You're more likely to get the middle numbers, and the extremes are going to be more unlikely. But I prefer to keep the extremes in to provide a more extreme version, and we've had both the extremes here. We had the South African Defence Forces defeated and made a few changes which weren't necessarily that significant, but they've basically eliminated the SWAPO units. So, you know, it might not necessarily happen like that each time. Now, again, one of the things that we can say about this from the perspective of modelling is that we've realised that whilst moving into that position, you know, has a certain significance, it also means we're close to this road, which means that these units can get quite close. Whereas so it might be better to actually be 1, 2, 3, 4, it might be better to be there, which would mean that these special force units might have a bit of a harder time getting there. I think I'm going to knock them down to 3s, and hopefully that will be a balance. Anyway, it's an interesting game. I like them when they're small and readily playable like that. Lots of permutations. We haven't got through to the second part, but I don't think the second part's really going to be much, be up to much. You can go for this one if you want. It specifies these twos, but it does specify others, so you could include that in your sort of others. You might want to say, well, we're going to the SWAPO forces stick to the border. We don't know how much sort of liberty they had across Zambia. These look as though they're actually on the border, easily crossable into Angola, and we only know that this one is there, and I put this one here because this one was there on the border. So this might be too far into Zambia, although if you look at it on the map, this is still on the border. Zambia is quite a big place, and when you zoom out, this is sort of quite close. So this is all border area anyway. There's no questions of that. Anyway, I'm going to. I wonder if that's a double. I think it is. I'm going to move these down to 3s, and I think that should give a little more balance. I might give them another motorized unit as well, actually. So anyway, if you enjoy that, if you want to play it, you can just go to the website and sign up, and you can play it yourself. I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.